Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure to welcome you all to our special event this afternoon. Please be informed that our agenda will begin shortly. And I would like to invite once again to all participants, you may please enter the ballroom and you may please have a seat as we would like to begin our event shortly. Thank you. Five, four, three, two, one. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, namo buddhaya, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we are here in Bali, allow me to greet you in Balinese way, Om Swastiastu. Which means that my health and prosperity are always among us. Greetings of virtue, may peace be upon us. Good afternoon and welcome to Padma Legian Hotel Bali. Today, 19th of November 2024 for OECD IOPS OJK Global Forum on Private Pensions, Improving Retirement Outcomes, Global Perspective. My name is Putri Cahaya and I'm truly honored to welcome you all to the beautiful island of God Bali. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as our VIP guests have already joined us in the room, allow me to greet our esteemed guests of honor. Good afternoon and welcome to the Honorable Chairman of the Board of Commissioners of OJK, Mr. Mahendra Siregar. Chief Executive of Insurance Guarantee Institutions and Pension Fund Supervision, Member of the Board of Commissioners OJK, Mr. Ogi Prastobiono. Director of the Financial and Enterprise Affairs Directorate OECD, Dr. Carmine Di Noia. Central Director of Pensions Fund Supervision Commission of Italy and outgoing IOPS President, Mr. Ambrogio Rinaldi. Deputy Commissioner of the Financial Sector Conduct Authority of South Africa and incoming IOPS President, Mrs. Astrid Ludin. And also we welcome representatives from Pension Supervisory Authorities of IOPS, Deputy Commissioner of OJK, Mr. Iwan Pasila and Mr. Bambang Mukti Riyadi. Head of Departments at OJK, Mr. Johnny Eri and Mr. Mukhlasin. Head of OJK Office Bali Province, Mrs. Kristrianti Puji Rahayu. And of course, a warm welcome to all our participants this afternoon. Please give applause to all participants today. Thank you so much for your presence on this lovely occasion. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we officially begin, allow me to provide a brief overview of our today's event. Today's agenda will commence with the opening remarks, followed by 2 panel discussions. And tomorrow we will have 4 panel discussions with coffee and lunch breaks in between, concluding with the closing remarks. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you have a pleasant and productive meeting. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to begin our event, let us hear the opening remarks from the Director of the Financial and Enterprise Affairs Director of OECD. Please join me in welcoming on stage Dr. Carmine Di Noia.
So dear colleagues, I guess I should say rekan yang tehormat or something like this. It's a pleasure to welcome you today in Bali on the occasion of the OECD IOPS OJK Global Forum on Private Pensions, and let me reiterate our gratitude and deep appreciation to the government of Indonesia for their hospitality and excellent organization of these meetings. And in particular, let me thank Mr. Mahindra Siregar, Chair of the Board of Commissioners of Financial Services Authority, OJK Indonesia, and all his team. I have to say, over the years, your contribution to the OECD global relations policy have been invaluable, and we really thank you for your continuous engagement, you and OJK. And I'm pleased to announce that actually at today's IOPS annual general meeting, OJK was elected to IOPS Executive Committee for the 2025-2026 terms, and so congratulations. And we look forward for your continued collaboration and contribution to the IOPS program of work. Actually, our collaboration with Indonesia spans nearly 2 decades, beginning with its designation and as OECD key partner in 2007. And Indonesia further solidified this partnership in 2014 by co-launching the OECD Southeast Asia Regional Program. And since then, our work together in finance has expanded significantly to include private pensions, insurance, and financial markets. In 2024, our relationship entered a new phase with the OECD Council decision to open accession discussion with Indonesia. And this is a historical step that will enhance the OECD global impact and support Indonesia's reform efforts by aligning with OECD standards and practices. The process will involve rigorous reviews by more than 20 OECD committees, several of which my directorate, DAF, actually oversees. And these include the Committee on Financial Markets, Corporate Governance, Investment and Competition, and the Working Group on Bribery. And I really look forward to working closely with you all throughout this process, as well as throughout our ongoing projects. Now, this event, the importance of this event, the OECD IOPS Global Forum over the next 2 days will serve as an important platform for furthering our work on private pensions. During this meeting, we will cover pension supervision, industry developments, the role of pension funds in capital markets, and their contribution to sustainable finance and digitalization. It will also offer valuable insights into the future of pension reforms in Indonesia and generally in the region, and provide an opportunity to exchange experiences on key areas, including first regional developments, This conference offers a detailed look at the recent experiences and reforms in asset-backed pensions across Indonesia and other Asian jurisdictions, including Cambodia, China, India, and the Philippines. In collaboration with OJK, the OECD has produced a report on pension protection gaps and challenges in Indonesia, which will be presented today. Its preliminary findings and policy recommendations will be discussed by both OJK and private sector representatives. Second, the role of pension funds in developing capital markets. In particular, we will discuss recent developments in pension fund investment regulation, such as measures to simplify and enhance flexibility and diversification, and steps to strengthen corporate governance. Additionally, we'll focus on the role of pension funds in improving capital market liquidity, stability, and governance, including stewardship practices and in selected jurisdictions. Third, sustainable finance, which is really a key topic on public policy agendas globally. Now, sustainable finance is also a priority work stream for the OECD Financial Markets Committee, which actually recently just established a dedicated working part. Its goal is to support the role of financial markets in addressing sustainability challenges, particularly the transition to net zero carbon economies. The work will focus on sustainability practices, net zero metrics, transition plans, the role of rating and index providers, and greenwashing. I look forward to the discussions and insights that will be shared in tomorrow's session. Last but not least, digital tools and their role in increasing coverage across the informal sector. Low pension coverage and insufficient savings, particularly in voluntary private pension systems, are key policy challenges in many regions. For example, in Asia and Africa, coverage often falls below 10%, and in some cases as low as 5%. We will also explore solutions and insights from selected jurisdictions, such as Hong Kong, China, Kenya, and Zimbabwe, on harnessing the benefits of digitalization to extend pension coverage and savings. And this is especially important for young people, the self-employed, and workers in the informal sector, as also we mentioned yesterday in the technical committee. Now, we understand these topics are highly relevant for the government of Indonesia and are participants from over 40 jurisdictions. And we look forward to discussing these with you. We also appreciate the valuable contributions from our partners, including the World Bank, International Actuarial Association, IAA, and American Council of Life Insurance, ACLI. And in particular, we plan to further strengthen our cooperation with the World Bank on the use of the OECD and IOPS standards and practices for the assessment by the World Bank and IMF of the financial systems around the world. Dear colleagues, this global forum, as well as IOPS annual meeting, demonstrate your commitment to adopting OECD and IOPS best practices and promoting these standards across Asia. Actually, I was discussing with the chair as Radine Agen-Kartini, a woman very important. She passed away very young, 25 years old, but she was a pioneering advocate for education and equality, and in particular, gender equality here in Indonesia. As she once said, the more we know, the more we can help others. And this is the purpose and the aim of this kind of meetings. So with this in mind, I hope this event provides an opportunity to exchange insights, foster mutual support, and work together towards greater progress and success. So thank you very much, and terima kasih banyak, more or less.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carmine Di Noia, for your very insightful speech in the beginning of this event. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our next agenda is the opening remarks from the Central Director of Pensions Fund Supervision Commission of Italy and outgoing IOPS President. Please welcome on stage Mr. Ambrogio Rinaldi.
Thank you very much, also from my side, Terima Rasik Banyak. It is really an honor for me to join my other colleagues, my other senior colleagues in opening this event. I'm probably one of the longest standing members of this pension community that meets at least 3 times a year, and one time for the General Assembly of IOPS and this global forum that we are holding today in different regions and continents of the world. And it is really an honor, and we are very, very pleased to be back in Asia, and for the first time actually in Eastern Asia, in Indonesia. Indonesia is really a strategic country in the middle of different areas of the world, with a very, very challenging and promising role in even now, but also for the future. And so we are very pleased to be here to join with you discussions about our field of specialization, so pensions. Let me say that before coming here, I didn't know much about Indonesia. It's the first time I'm here, and I was impressed really by the history of Indonesia, the complexity of the history of Indonesia, the diversity of your country, but your ability to, in quite a short time, to make changes to develop a modern and democratic system in terms of politics, and still to keep unity of the country, despite so many your geographical wonderful situation of having 17,000 islands. That is just something really impressive to all of us. But so I want to stop here. I will not enter into the discussion and description of what will be the topics to be discussed. I just want to say thank you very much for the organization of this meeting. The setting is just wonderful. Probably you are defining a very high standards that it will be difficult to meet. And it's really one of the highest that I have seen around the world. We have a very large participation of countries today, and it would be very challenging to us to talk about pension systems that are referred to more than a half of the population of the entire world, taking into account the different countries that we will discuss. And also a number of smaller countries and that also have specific problems that in issues to deal with in the field of pensions. So we understand that the challenge of defining a good pension system is difficult, but we are here to bring contributions from experience of other countries, but also to learn a lot about your specific situation. Thank you again very, very much, and I wish a very interesting conference to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambrogio Rinaldi, for the speech, and we are truly honored for having you here in Bali. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, proceeding to the next session, I would like to invite the Deputy Commissioner of the Financial Sector Conduct Authority of South Africa and incoming IOPS President. Please welcome on stage Mrs. Astrid Ludin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Siregar, Chairperson of the Board of Commissioners of the Financial Authority of Indonesia, Commissioners of the OJK, and esteemed colleagues, IOPS delegates and colleagues, and just other members of the audience. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to be able to welcome you today in my new capacity as President of the International Organization of Pension Supervisors to this 2024 OECD IOPS Global Forum on Private Pensions. Let me start by adding my thanks to those of previous speakers, to our host, the Chairman of the Board of Commissioners, Mr. Siregar, for hosting the IOPS annual general meetings or annual meetings, as well as this global forum. We thank you and your team for all the efforts put into organizing these high-level events, which bring together an important audience, I think, not only today, but over the last few days, from Indonesian government authorities, heads of supervisory bodies, senior officials, and experts from Asia and around the world. As some of you know, the IOPS annual general meeting was held this morning, and Carmina has already talked to some of those results. We welcome Indonesia onto the Executive Committee, and I'm also honored to assume the responsibilities of the IOPS presidency. And I'd like, again, to express my sincere thanks to the IOPS governing members for the trust and the confidence that was placed in me, but also in the Executive Committee. I also congratulate Ms. Angela Mazarol. Angela, I realize I only know you as Angie. I've never actually pronounced your surname, so forgive me if I've not pronounced it correctly, who is the chair of the Canadian Association of Pension Supervisory Authorities. That's called, the acronym is CAPSA, and also the vice president of the Financial and Consumer Commission of New Brunswick, who was elected to become the second vice president of IOPS. So Angela and I join the other IOPS executive officers to form a perfectly gender-balanced group. If I didn't know better, I think somebody carefully selected this group. So this group now includes Angela and Ursula Schwarzhaupt as vice presidents, Brendan Kennedy and Jiang Bo, the chair and the vice chair of the IOPS Technical Committee, and Prakash Sivasankar, our very dedicated IOPS treasurer. So 3 women and 3 men. I also wish to proudly note that the authority that I represent, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority in South Africa, which was formerly known as the Financial Services Board, is one of the founding members of IOPS. And since its inception, we've actively supported the mission of IOPS to make the supervision of private pension systems more effective through the exchange of supervisory best practices, standard-setting activities, cooperation, and policy dialogue. And I hope that we can build on that firm foundation to further extend the exchange and the cooperation amongst our members. One of the goals I think we should be setting ourselves as the Executive Committee is to continue to grow the membership of our organization from the current 92 members and 82 observer countries. I think this will require a concerted effort from all the members, from the Executive Committee, and of course the IOPS Secretariat, as while our membership extends across all regions, I think we can certainly enhance the membership. For example, from Europe, I know we have a lot of African members, but there's certainly potential to extend that further. And I think we should also deepen our relationship with appropriate regional networks where they exist, such as associations of pension supervisors. I'm of course familiar with the Committee of Insurance, Securities and Non-Banking Financial Authorities, which is CISNA, which represents pension supervisors amongst other regulators in Southern Africa. However, I'm sure that there are regional networks, similar networks, in other regions, and I think we need to consider as an organization how we extend that network. IOPS, through its own work and through, of course, its relationship, its very close relationship with the OECD Working Party on Private Pensions, already provides an incredible body of work for two pension supervisors. And we should carefully consider how we position that work and our organization, IOPS, to increase its visibility. I think members of the Executive Committee will certainly have to play an important role in that, as well as the IOPS Secretariat. So I think this is one of the tasks as the Executive Committee we will need to explore further, of course together with the IOPS Secretariat. And the important point or thrust of enhancing the visibility of the organization is going to be, I think, the primary point of discussion for a strategy that we need to develop, a future strategy, and it will probably also impact on our program of work. That new program of work has, of course, been adopted this morning at the AGM, and it currently includes key projects that Carmine already talked to, the update of existing IOPS instruments, as well as the updating of the methodology for self-assessment against the IOPS principles of private pension supervision, as well as key thematic projects that relate to governance, supervision. I think we particularly talked about supervision of defined contribution funds, but supervision more generally, sustainable finance, which Carmine also mentioned, and artificial intelligence. And maybe we should extend it beyond artificial intelligence to emerging technologies. We have just completed the revision of the IOPS principles on private pension supervision, and will soon launch those for public consultation. So members here today, and of course those that are not here, are invited to share the final version of the revised principles with relevant stakeholders in their jurisdictions. And as Carmine earlier highlighted, the ultimate objective will be to see the IOPS principles, which are part of the OECD core principles of private pension regulation, to be widely used during what we, certainly in South Africa, called FSAPs around the world, so financial sector assessment programs. The next step will be to revise the IOPS methodology. And the methodology currently has been a useful tool to our members, for our members to undertake a self-assessment of compliance with their supervisory structures with these international best practices or good practices, and to identify what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses in their own domestic application of these principles. We may also want, in time, to review not only the methodology, but also the kind of oversight and support we provide to it as an organization. In other organizations, such as IOSCO that I'm quite familiar with, there are different ways in which this is done, and these are all things that I think we should be considering. As part of the global positioning of IOPS, we will continue, of course, and expand the fruitful cooperation we have with other leading international organizations, such as the OECD, the World Bank, and the FSB, and presumably also the IMF, as well as international associations such as IIS, as well as IOSCO, both for thematic projects and for joint standard-setting activities. We will also jointly, as an executive committee, explore how we can position IOPS at the G20. As you know, South Africa will assume the presidency of the G20 in 2025, and we're working on ways currently to insert IOPS into the agenda, as well as sideline events at the meetings. So we think that bringing our work, the IOPS work, to the G20 will enhance the visibility of our activities and strengthen the position of IOPS as a leading global body. But now, let me return to the business of the day. I think we have a very interesting agenda over the next 1.5 days, and it focuses on the key problems that we face in private pension systems. So some of the projects I referred to earlier are part of the agenda, and I really look forward to hearing all the interesting presentations. And I suppose, as always at an IOPS conference, the most important thing is that we are here to debate, to learn from each other's experiences, to search for new ideas, and to find innovative ways to address the challenges that we all face. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the proceedings, which I certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Astrid, for your wonderful speech this afternoon. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, for the final remarks, we would like to invite the Chairman of the Board of Commissioners of OJK to deliver his remarks and officially open this event. Please welcome on stage Mr. Mahendra Siregar.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu. Very good afternoon to all of us here gathering in this room. First, I would like to honor our guest, special guest, Dr. Carmine De Noia, and then Mr. Ambrogio Rinaldi. Mr. Rinaldi, actually, your last name is Indonesian name. Rinaldi, yes. I have my cousin exactly with that name. Mrs. Astrid Ludin, again, Astrid is an Indonesian name. My dear colleague, Bapak Ogi Prastomiono, Commissioner of OJK, representative from financial regulators and pension supervisory authorities, delegates from all members of IOPS and other guests, and also leaders of the pension fund industries, distinguished guests and participants. First of all, it is my great honor to welcome you all to this wonderful setting of Bali, the Island of Gods, for the IOPS annual meeting, as well as the OECD IOPS OJK Global Forum. And of course, we sincerely hope that these two meetings would provide an important platform to build synergy, collaboration, network, and knowledge sharing among the key global stakeholders on pension system. and would certainly be able to empower us with our strength to address common challenges as well as to achieve the benefit of our respective pension fund systems. Before I proceed further, let me share with you a little bit about Bali, because I thought everyone that comes to Bali for this gathering already been here at least 5 times. But I realized there are people already here for the first time or the second time, and well, for the better or worse, I'm very sure this would not be your last one. First of all, Bali is unique in many senses. Out of the 4.4 million population of Bali, 86% of which are the people believe in Hinduism. This happened in a country of 280 million people where 90% are Muslims. So that in itself is unique. The second one is, of course, unlike many other islands or cities or provinces in all over Indonesia, Bali is very much heavily dependent on tourism and hospitality. 50% of Bali local production or local GDP depends on tourism and hospitality. And the other 50% support the tourism and hospitality. So basically it's 100% depends on tourism and hospitality. That is why among our provinces and areas, Bali was, I could say, the last one that just rebounds from the post-COVID effect situation. And this is another unique circumstances for the regulator. I didn't know this, but of course I know through the hard way. We managed to provide a special forbearance measures only applied to Bali out of our 34 provinces. This is almost a miracle because we are not a federal government. We are a unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia. So you are not allowed to give a special, exceptional case for policies for a particular area, except, of course, there will be a major situation. But of course, COVID hit every province in Indonesia and every country in the world, actually. But we were allowed to do that because it was Bali. So it was not so much about the rational politics. It's more about the heart and mind and the spirit of all people in Indonesia that did not protest why Bali was given special dispensation or facilities in this situation. So that shows you how Bali is special. But another thing is, not even too many Indonesians know that, and some Indonesians are jealous of Bali because many international communities know Bali further before, better than Indonesia. So they were a little bit envy about that. But I think I have to share to my Indonesian colleagues as well. If I can show you a photo of, bisa ditayangkan? This one here. Does anyone know what it is? This is, of course, there was no Indonesia at the time. This took place in 1931 in Paris. 1931 in Paris, around 14 years before Indonesia established itself as an independent state. This was the photo from, at the time, with a different name. Now it's called Paris Tropical Carnival event. So this is the Dutch Indies Pavilion presented by the, at the time, of course, Dutch colonial government at that exhibition. And it was Bali's typical stature of the temple. So this was 14 years before Indonesia. So for you, brothers and sisters who are envy of Bali, they already had a tourism exhibition 14 years before our independence. So we are not entitled to be jealous of Bali. That was the message behind this. But this also shows us that many of us in the international community know Bali better than the rest of Indonesia, because it was introduced further and earlier than the rest of us. But I think there is no more Indonesians are jealous about Bali. Actually, now we are more rational and we are more financially literate. Now we are even leverage Bali for our own common benefit. So now that's among others what we are doing today. We are leveraging Bali to entice IOPS and to entice Global Forum to take place here. And then you see the record turnout of participants. I understand out of the 42 countries, 42 countries, there are 156 participants today. And that's already my understanding, Ambrogio, that this is a record in itself for IOPS and Global Forum events. So that's how you leverage Bali and you turn around from envy to maximizing the benefit. Dear honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, of course, as we know, the global economy now faces multi-challenges that is critical to uphold its economic growth. And we see that the year economic growth level around 2.6 and next year of 2.7, very much below the pre-COVID level in the previous decade before the COVID that reached 3.1% of global growth. And this, of course, we understand because of the situation in the Middle East and in Ukraine, but also the overall geopolitical tension that has created uncertainty of itself through various ways that impacting economies around the world, especially developing countries and emerging economies. With that situation in mind, the Indonesian economy has managed to sustain its economic growth at 5% per year. And hopefully we can also sustain the same level this year. That said, it would not satisfy the new president because President Prabowo's target is to achieve 7 to 8% economic growth in the next few years. So it is a big common challenge for all Indonesians now to increase its level of growth from 5 to 7 and 8 in the next few years in the current global economic circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, with that condition of economic growth and stability, Indonesian pension fund industry also grows steadily. We have recorded 10.1% economic growth for the pension fund as a whole in 2024 up to October. That makes the total assets of our pension fund reach $95 billion. And this year, OJK has introduced the 2024-2028 pension fund roadmap, which aims to expand pension coverage in both formal and informal sectors, improve governance, develop human resources, and build a more robust pension program ecosystem. And to strengthen Indonesia's financial services industry, OJK is implementing comprehensive reform based on 4 key pillars. First, the capital strengthening and market deepening. Second, enhanced governance and risk management. Third, industrial ecosystem and development. And fourth, adoption of best practices and international standards. In addition to that, we also would harmonize voluntary and mandatory pension schemes as a key priority, and OJK for that objective is working closely with the government. Therefore, the topics of your discussion in the coming day and a half, which include the challenges and solutions in pension system, long-term investments by pension funds and their role in capital market development, combining mandatory and voluntary pension arrangement to close protection gaps, the role of pension funds in advancing sustainable finance, and leveraging digitalization in pensions to reach the informal sector are very much relevant for us and should give us useful insights and lesson learned from your own respective experiences to our main key deliverables in the roadmap. And therefore, I am very happy to have my colleagues, delegates, to attend this forum and share their experience and challenges and learn from you. And I hope this record-making event of 150 participants from 42 countries was certainly fruitful and productive to you all. And of course, during the coffee breaks or after the day meeting, I hope you can also spend your time, enjoy the beautiful island of Bali, and of course, spend a lot of money in doing a lot of shoppings because you should not make your families and friends jealous of you coming to Bali and bring nothing home. And we hope that would give you a very good feeling factor. And that feel-good factor always works well for your next excuse to return to Bali. So I wish you all a fruitful and productive deliberations and great outcomes. With that, it is my great honor to officially open the OECD IOPS OJK Global Forum on Private Pensions 2024. Thank you very much. Om Swastiastu.
Thank you, Mr. Mahendra. Please remain on stage as now we would like to present the token of appreciation. And we also invite Mr. Ogi Prastomiono to please join Mr. Mahendra on stage. And to receive the token of appreciation, we now welcome Dr. Carmine Di Noia. Please welcome on stage Mr. Ambrogio Rinaldi and Mrs. Astrid Ludin. Please be on stage to receive the token of appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, we will witness together the handover of token of appreciation to our guests of honor who are joining us on this special occasion. And at this moment, Mr. Mahendra Siregar will present the token of appreciation to the representative of the OECD, Dr. Carmine Di Noia. Please give applause, ladies and gentlemen, for this procession. Continue with photo. Thank you. And next, Mr. Ogi Prastomiono will present token of appreciation to the outgoing IOPS President, Mr. Ambrogio Rinaldi. Mr. Ogi will also present the token of appreciation to the incoming IOPS President, Mrs. Astrid Ludin. And also, Mr. Mahendra Siregar as the chairman witnessing the occasion. And before proceeding downstairs to the guests of honor on stage, you may please stay on your position and face the camera as now we would like to take the photograph to the VIP on stage. Yes, we have a very special token of appreciation. And then VIP on stage, please face the camera and show us your big smile before we officially start the panel discussion. Okay, allow me to do the countdown in 1, 2, 3. Thank you. And now we also take a pictures with all of participants this afternoon. And for that, all the VIP on stage, please proceed downstairs and please be upstanding in front of the table and face the photographer on stage, and also would like to invite all the participants of today's meeting to please be upstanding and face the camera from the photographer on stage, as we have to capture our moment of togetherness before we start our panel discussions. So get ready, everyone. Can you please closer to the center, please? Thank you. I guess everyone's ready. So please face the camera. Allow me to do the countdown on 3, 2, 1. One more. Yes. Okay, one more. 3, 2, 1. Okay, with this pose, follow me. Yes. One more. Like this. Okay, on your right hand. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the photo session. Now, as Mr. Mahendra and Mr. Ogi have other commitments, they may be excused to attend to their subsequent engagement. And we are so grateful for having the time with Mr. Mahendra and Mr. Ogi. Can we give big round of applause to Mr. Mahendra and Mr. Ogi? Thank you for your valuable time in joining us in the opening ceremony of OECD IOPS OJK Global Forum on Private Pensions this afternoon. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our first panel discussion is about to begin. But before that, allow me to give you important information. So, in every panel discussions, as today I mentioned earlier, we have 2 panel discussions. And in every panel discussion, we have Q&A session. And you can write your questions through scanning the barcode that we have provided on each table. You can scan the barcode, you can write your questions, and later when the moderators start the Q&A session, they will read your questions to the panelists. Thank you so much for your kind participations. And without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us begin our first panel discussion. And the title is Asset-Backed Pensions in Indonesia, Policy and Supervisory Challenges and Solutions. And to lead this session, I would like to invite the Executive Director for Regulation and Consumer Protection, National Bank of Slovakia, and Chair of the OECD Working Party on Private Pensions. Please give a warm welcome and applause to Mrs. Julia Chilikova. Stage is yours.
Thank you. Let me firstly introduce or invite my panelists into the floor. And first is Jessica Mosher. She is a pensions expert and actuary from the OECD. Jessica, thank you for coming. Ivan Pasila, Deputy Commissioner, Financial Services Authority, Indonesia. Hi. And Siti Rahmati from Pension Fund of Telekom Indonesia. I will jump directly to our session because due to some time reason, but let me also to thanks to Indonesian host for the kind hospitality and to give us the chance to be here. And I will use the sentence which Carmine mentions, more you know, more you can help other. And I believe that this session and all of these seminars could help us to be useful for the other and to improve our pension system. Because pensions is one of the, I think, crucial rights for the people, and to have some reasonable income in the retirement age, it's something what improve our quality of life. What is the content or the topic for today? It's asset-backed pension in Indonesia, policy and supervisory challenges and solution. And what we try to do in the beginning is that Jessica will cherry picking or to choose some lesson learned from the Indonesian system, and they try to give you some recommendation coming from the best practice of the OECD. But what we will be targeting for today is topics which all of us are facing, and it's a reasonable investment which could deliver the reasonable profits, and also the design of the accumulation. And I can assure you, our Indonesian colleagues, that the accumulations is a huge challenge also for the other jurisdiction, because I think that real outcomes or fruits of pensions we can take in the decumulation phases. And now I will leave the floor to Jessica, and she will try to summarize basics. And please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia, and good afternoon, everyone. I do have some slides. I don't know if they're going to come up or if someone else is managing them. But there they are. So I think I just tell you when to change them because I don't have the clicker. As Carmine actually introduced already, we're working on a report on Indonesia looking at the protection gaps and pension challenges for the system. And we're doing this a bit all across Asia, and while we're focusing on the Indonesian system in this session today, I think we're really going to be focusing on issues that, thank you, are broadly applicable and to a lot of systems and are issues that a lot of countries are struggling with. And so, so we will get started. I will start my presentation just with a brief introduction of the Indonesian system to provide some context of what we're discussing today, and then I'll go into highlighting some of the key policy challenges we're seeing and discussing some potential solutions based on OECD recommendations and international experience and country practices. So a brief overview of the Indonesian system. The part that we're focusing on today, so this is, we're not discussing, we'll leave the public sector pensions to the side because they have their own schemes, but today we'll be focusing on the private sector schemes and informal workers. So this is made up in Indonesia of two mandatory systems managed by the public entity BPJS. The first is the JP Defined Benefit Scheme. This is mandatory for employees of large and medium enterprises. And then the JHT, which is a DC scheme managed by the same institution that's also mandatory for employees of small enterprises. So employees of micro enterprises and informal workers are not required to contribute to the system, although they can contribute to the defined contribution system if they want. And the large, medium, and small enterprise that makes up approximately one-third of the Indonesian workforce. So that gives you an idea of the coverage. On top of these mandatory schemes, employers are also able to offer voluntary occupational plans, either through funds they manage themselves, then this could be either DB or DC, or through a fund that they set up with an external financial provider. And these are all voluntary. So that gives you some context of what we're talking about today. But the two main issues that I want to highlight in my presentation and that my colleagues will subsequently follow up on in theirs is the challenges of investment and decumulation. So first to start with investment, a big challenge we see in Indonesia is that the investment strategies are overly conservative and lack diversification. So we can see in this chart the asset allocation of voluntary funds in Indonesia compared to other OECD countries. And these are ordered from left to right based on their investment in cash deposits and bonds. So more or less the conservatism of the investment. And we can see Indonesia is really way on the left here. So quite conservative. The employer pension funds are investing over 70% in cash deposits and bonds. the financial institution pension funds over 90%, and what's more is 60% in cash and deposits. So investors, members are really not getting that enough return on their investment here. One challenge, or one issue leading to this challenge is the restrictive investment limits that are in place. For one, there's a minimum requirement of 30% investment in government bonds for voluntary pension funds. Generally speaking, the OECD core principles recommend against having minimum investment limits, as this can impede diversification. So this is one issue, relaxing some of these restrictive investment requirements to promote more diversified investment strategies. Another issue is the restriction on foreign investment, and this is a challenge we're actually seeing in a lot of OECD countries. Because as the pension assets grow, particularly as a respective percentage of GDP, it becomes more difficult to sufficiently diversify investment strategies in the domestic market. So it's necessary at a certain point to look abroad. And this is a challenge even for small OECD countries, but also developing economies. So we've seen Peru is a really good example where pension fund investment has followed very closely the relaxation of investment limits on foreign investments. So at the beginning of 2000, they were investing about 5%, and that level, the restrictions have gradually been lifted, and now they're investing around 50%, and so there's a lot of appetite from the pension funds and need for them to invest abroad to diversify their investment strategies. Another way to encourage more diversified strategies is to introduce default life cycle investment strategies. So the OECD recommendations also highlight the importance of having an appropriate default investment strategy for retirement for members. And life cycle strategies are quite useful because they promote investment in higher risk assets at younger ages when members have a longer investment horizon in front of them. So this can be a way to promote more diversified and risk-taking investment. And conservative investment indeed can be quite detrimental to savers. Julia has experience in this in her own country, where the default for at a certain period of time was in bond funds for members, and this resulted in an estimated 2 to 8 billion euros in lost savings for members. And so now they've moved towards a life cycle default in 2023, so hopefully that will start to improve things. And we found, even in our own analysis, diversified strategies nearly always result in better investment outcomes over the long term. We have a chapter also coming out in our Pensions Outlook that will be published in a few weeks now that demonstrates this quite clearly. Another challenge is ensuring adequate expertise in not only the governing bodies, but I think Ms. Siti will address this later, but also in those bodies overseeing the system as a whole, to make sure that they're understanding that the benefits that diversification can bring. One way that countries, well, ideally, people in these positions will be subject to some sort of eligibility requirements, either relating to their knowledge or professional expertise. Some jurisdictions actually require formal demonstration of technical competence to be able to serve in certain roles. But this is not always practical. Another approach can be to require training and education for those appointed, and this can involve either required training when someone is appointed initially. This is the approach taken in Ireland. Ongoing requirements for professional development. This is the approach taken in the Netherlands, or either on demand, so having courses available for trustees, for example, when on topics that they feel that they need to increase their expertise on. And this is something that the UK regulator has been doing. And another approach is also to establish expert committees, external expert committees, to advise these people, particularly on investment and risk management. I think, do I still have some time?
Thank you. That's, you can,
Should
I think,
I stop?
yeah. No, you can
Okay, good.
continue, yeah.
Okay, I can continue. I thought you were looking at me like I should stop. No, we're very short on time. So the next challenge I wanted to highlight is the challenge related to the design of the decumulation strategies and ensuring that individuals or members are protected from longevity risk. And this is a big challenge in Indonesia, in part due to the reluctance of providers to offer lifetime income products, also because of they're lacking tools to manage both the investment and longevity risk. But also that individuals don't find these types of products attractive. This is not a unique solution, but interest rates are a unique problem to Indonesia, but interest rates have been going down, which means the incomes these products can offer are also going down. And there tends to be a kind of broader distrust of financial institutions, so people are reluctant to take out such long-term products with them. And then, of course, there's a problem of a low-level savings. If people aren't saving enough, you can't convert that savings into a lifetime income. Several potential solutions to address this problem. I think the first thing to highlight is in the OECD recommendations, we do highlight the importance of having coherence in the design. First, coherence between the accumulation and the payout phase. So if this pension plan, if the intention and objective of that plan is to finance retirement, we need to work on limiting early withdrawals from that plan and make sure that savings is going towards retirement. But also coherence with the rest of the system as a whole. So we need to look at the role of a particular component of the system and make sure the payout design for that component is in line with its intended purpose of the system. So if that plan is intending to finance basic needs and essential spending in retirement, guaranteed lifetime income is quite well adapted to doing that, particularly for mandatory savings plans. But of course, we also need to allow for flexibility where appropriate and recognize where maybe if the savings have not been big enough, lifetime income is probably not going to be feasible, but then we still need to think about, okay, maybe temporary drawdown solutions and not just resorting to lump sums. Another interesting solution we've been seeing come up in a few countries are products that allow the benefits to be adjusted depending on actual investment or longevity experience. And this can address both supply and demand challenges, because on the supply side, it obviously reduces the risk exposure to the providers, so they may be more willing to provide these products. And on the demand side, it allows, because there's no hard guarantees, it allows more flexibility in the investment strategies because those guarantees don't need to be hedged. So this can actually result in higher expected incomes to people. But if there is still a reluctance of providers to enter this market, a lot of OECD countries actually have introduced public annuity providers as a way to ensure supply. But also in the case where there's a problem of trust in the system, to the extent that the population may trust public institutions more than private institutions, this can also be a way to overcome these challenges. I will stop here. And I think my colleagues will have more nuanced perspectives on some of these challenges and provide their insights on the practicality of some of these solutions in the Indonesian context.
Thank you, Jessica. And before I leave the floor to Ivan, I would like to remind that it's not too easy to say the books about the best solution, best practice, best recommendation. We have only the recommended what is the good, but what we definitely can tell that if you know there's a list of mistakes, don't repeat the mistakes. And this very conservative investment, that really to show you that and don't using the life cycling, that people lose the chance to use the advantage of the capital markets. That the theory show us that you should to invest the more risky and more with the higher profitability, and it give you the interest. That's one time I can share with you our story, but it was yesterday we had the Hong Kong presentation, which definitely to show us the importance of life cycling and but also the role of the passivity, because what was hidden after the political decision of my country was some kind of risk awareness, or that people are so conservative and not expect to accept the losses and give them the chance to actively to change the strategy. Nobody, or minimum of the people, to change the strategy. That's, I think, that the reasonable default solution, taking into account the life cycling, it should be the crucial. And I will leave the rest of the comments for our discussion, and I would like to leave the floor to Ivan. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you. I think let me share with you our market and also the experience that we are going through now in Indonesia. Can you please apologies for the transition. Okay. Yeah. So just to update you on our market in Indonesia that we supervise right now under Pak Ogi, we have pension fund, insurance, and also guarantee institution. Out of 584 institutions, actually only 4 institutions covering the mandatory, and the rest cover the private coverage. The total asset is around rupiah 2,713 trillion rupiah. That's is around 180 billion US dollar, and the invested asset is slightly above 2,000 trillion rupiah, or around 138 billion US dollar. The account holders is actually more than our population, around 540, close to 542 million accounts. But mind you that these accounts can be double or triple of the employees. This is out of our current population of around 280 million population. Allow me also to note that actually on the pension fund, the total asset is around slightly above 1,500 trillion rupiah, or slightly above 100 billion US dollar. And the mandatory take a significant account of that, more than 1,100 trillion rupiah, close to around 75 billion US dollar. The voluntary take smaller of that. The voluntary actually consists of employer pension fund on the defined benefit, and then a small number of defined contribution plan. And we also have what we call the financial institution pension plan. This is run by bank or life insurance company, and now extended to asset management. So this is just to show you, this is the portfolio of our voluntary pension fund. The top left hand corner is actually the total that comprises of around 369 trillion rupiah. The majority you can see is on the government bonds, close to 40%. And like Jessica mentioned before, in Indonesia, because of the perception of the risk, we still have some investment in deposit and corporate bonds. So you see the orange bar become bigger and bigger across the time. And this is where the investment in government bonds become bigger because of the perception on the capital market, which is currently going through a fundamental fluctuation. The dark blue is deposit. If you see quite significant, and this is one of the anomalies as well. The bottom right-hand corner is actually, this is the pension fund, financial institution pension fund, which is run by the bank or the life insurance. And you may ask why a significant investment on the money market. And this is when you talk to the pension fund financial institution, they said this is because of the customers request the fixed income or money market just to make sure that they have the accumulation on the monthly or annual basis. But as mentioned before, this is not the correct way in accumulating the fund going forward. The mandatory is slightly different figures, but the portion of the government bond is even bigger, close to 67%, and on the deposit is around 13%. This is probably to manage the liquidity. Just to show you the existing gaps that we have in our market, the blue one this is the type of pension fund that we have right now. We have 3 mandatory pension funds, and we have 1 box for voluntary pension fund. The 3 mandatory pension fund, this is comprised of mandatory for the government employees, the mandatory of the Army and Police Department, and also there is a mandatory pension fund for the private employees. And this is run by BPJS Tenaga Kerja that Jessica mentioned before. The benefits is actually quite similar in the pension fund for the government employees and also the Army Police Department. They comprise of 2 benefits, the lump sum and also the pension fund, which is paid on the monthly. On the government employees and also for the Army pension fund, the monthly payment, monthly income is paid as you go upon retirement. And this is where we see there's a significant uncertainty because this is depend on the government budget on the annual basis. On the mandatory pension fund for the private employees, although they are 2 similar, the monthly income is more on the composite scheme. They combine the defined benefit and defined contribution, so it's kind of mixed benefit to them. And on the voluntary, this is where we have pension fund with defined benefit. The benefit mirroring the benefit for the mandatory government employees and also the Army and Police Department. And the pension fund with defined contribution, this is starting to increase because of the capability of the employer to fund the benefit, and they try to shift to the defined contribution side. But as I mentioned before, with the few that just to accumulate the fund on the fixed income basis, which is not sufficient going forward. The financial institution pension fund mostly on the money market as shown before. So we see the gaps on the mandatory pension fund. The first gap will be the discipline on contribution payment, especially from the employer. And this is on the government mandatory pension fund. This is because of the capability on the government budget. And we see also the insufficient in accumulating the fund, because the way we accumulate is mainly on how to get the optimal return on the asset without connecting that to the characteristic of the liabilities, the duration, as well as on the liquidity side. So this is the gap that we think would put our pension fund in danger going forward. The sustainability of the pay-as-you-go scheme, this is also become a concern, because this is heavily related on the capability of the government to fund for the budget on an annual basis. And of these 4, we also see that there is potential going forward, especially with the longevity, that the fund will be insufficient to fund for the healthcare expense and the long-term care. So this is all the concern that we have right now, that we portray as the gaps that we need to try to bridge. My last slide try to put some effort that we are doing now to narrowing the gap. On the left-hand side, this is the roadmap that we built and we issued, I think, late last year, whereby we show that we want to show the roadmap going forward for pension fund in Indonesia. The target is actually to have the density by 2028 at 20%. This is actually close to what we have right now, around 18%. But we expect the significant increase of the labor force going forward because of the our workforce shape of pyramid going forward, because we are approaching the 2045 golden age for Indonesia. So we expect to cover at least 20% of the density. Now there are 4 efforts that we are doing right now to narrowing the gap. The first one is on inclusion. As Jessica mentioned before, currently the mandatory private employees pension fund is focused more on the formal side. We cover the 40% of the former employees, while we have some difficulty or challenges to cover the 60% of the informal. Now what we are thinking is that the government program on the BPJS Tenaga Kerja may not be able to fund for this informal, because informal means that people who with the income, probably more than enough income, but the frequency is not that on a monthly basis. So for example, when we talk about this informal, sometimes we are not talking about the people on the selling in the wet market, but we are talking about, for example, the movie star, where they have this their income, significant high income, but not on the frequent basis. We haven't tapped to this kind of segment. So the inclusion side, we want our pension fund to try to to tap this market. And what we are thinking is that actually this is probably the opportunity for our private pension fund, especially the financial institution pension fund, to try to expand their digital capability and try to offer the new products for this segment of market, because they are the one without the frequent income, monthly income, and then but they have probably more than capable income capability. The other part that we also push in Indonesia is that when we talk about the severance pay in Indonesia, we have the law for the every company to set up the severance pay as a mandatory. But currently, there is no requirement to put that on the invested asset. So what they are doing is that most companies just put that under the liability, but then there is no matching invested asset to match for this severance pay. So if we can push this part, this is also will increase the capability of the company to fund for the pension going forward. There is a effort now under the Omnibus Law to extend what we call the mandatory scheme for people with a higher level of income. But this is there is still some work to be done on the government regulation to enable this part. We also facing the capability on the expertise in managing the fund. As I mentioned before, in OJK, we are trying to push for the sufficient expertise in the GRC and also the compliance in managing the fund. And we issue few regulation on this one, both on the expertise in the pension fund, expertise on risk management and compliance on investment side. And we in OJK try to push the pension fund to perform their expertise on GRC and compliance to make sure that the first and the second layers do their part in managing the risk. On the investment policy, as mentioned before, we actually don't connect our investment policy with the duration of the life to retirement of the members. So what we are doing now is we ask the pension fund to connect the policy liability duration with the investment to make sure that when they invest, they take into account the liability duration, they take into account the need for the liquidity, and they take into account the quality of the asset that they invested. This is to make sure that the pension can get their benefit when they retire. We also, as mentioned before, we try to promote now what we call the life cycle fund strategy, because as already explored before, that in Indonesia, we don't do this intentionally. Some pension fund do that, but not all the pension fund. So we try to roll out this thinking that, look, pension fund, you need to invest based on the life cycle of your members. For those who just enter the fund, then you can invest in the more risky asset to earn higher return. But of course, there's some risk management and compliance to be done on that one. We also, in our current regulation, we also extend the capability to run the pension fund financial institution. We extend this to the asset management with the hope that because they have the expertise in managing the long-term fund, they can also extend their capability and also the expertise to manage the fund. We work with the Ministry of Finance as well to try to be able to introduce the long-term government bonds. And I think about 2 months ago, government started to issue the 40 years government bond, and they are thinking to also start to issue the 50 years government bond. While we are very happy on this one, we also need to make sure that we manage the balance so that the pension fund can still have some asset to invest in the capital market, because otherwise they will shift all to the government bond, and this is probably not good to the capital market. There's an emerging risk that we need to take care of on our side in Indonesia. I mentioned before on the longevity, because of the potential pensioner live longer, they are exposed to the need to fund for their longer retirement period, and also for their long-term care and also the health expense. In Indonesia, probably we are facing with a very significant high inflation on the medical treatment, and this is also the challenges for us. We are now working with the Ministry of Health to try to make sure that we can deliver the healthcare in the more efficient way by try to sort of work with the healthcare ecosystem to make sure that we can cope with or we can treat the current inefficiency in the healthcare deliveries to make sure that we have the healthcare ecosystem to support for this emerging risk, because otherwise this the longer the pensioner or retired lives, I think the more the exposure on the healthcare they need. So I will stop there for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. And if we try to find the solution for the policy and supervisory challenges, is the best way is a dialogue between the industry, the dialogue between the policymaker, and dialogue between the regulators. Exchange the view, take the lesson learned, and I think that the participation sitting on this panel is an excellent opportunity how to discuss, because even to explain that in the roadmap when is the potential space for the improvement, and we are now facing the view for the same topic from the little bit different angle, and definitely is the view how to reach the good solution. The city floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I came from Defined Benefit Employer Pension Fund, but in here I would like to represent both also the public and private pension fund, as well as the individuals who are responsible for managing their pension fund by themselves. Yeah. Since the basic of the pensions is income smoothing between the employment and post-employment periods, I classify the problems into parts: the accumulation part and decumulation parts. In the accumulation part, currently Indonesia ratio of pension saving compared to GDP is very low. It's around 7%, much below our neighboring country like Malaysia, who the number is around 65%, and the number is even bigger in the more developed countries. And many factors maybe become the cause, and the first one is the lack of suitable instruments. And for the defined benefit programs that have to manage the fund to fulfill the liability, we are lack of the LDI instruments for interest rates, reinvestments, and also the longevity risk mitigations. In Indonesia, we don't have yet the zero coupon bond for the long term, and also the derivative instruments for hedging purposes is not yet there. But luckily we have, as mentioned by Pak Iwan before, the Ministry of Finance, endorsed by OJK, is already issued the long-term bonds to just reduce the asset liability mismatch in terms of durations. And also the stock markets needs to deepening to overcome the liquidity and volatility issues. Our investor base is very thin, while for example, for the defined benefit pension fund is currently due to the de-risking initiative, they no longer receive the new members or already been freezed, so they have a declining risk capacity to invest in equity. And also for the foreign investors are very sensitive to the sentiment and technical issues, so they are generally not stay for long, but very volatile. And for the defined contribution pensions, both for employer as well as the finance institution, is, as Pak Iwan mentioned before, the investment is more biased in the fixed income, maybe because they don't implement yet the life cycle investing. And for the alternative assets, we still have a limited partnership and also the private equity, the REITs, and also infrastructure fund that manage to add some diversification benefit as well as to inflation hedging. And for the employer pension fund, the sponsor affiliated investments could create the lack of diversifications and also the liquidity and transfer pricing issues. And the second part of the problem of low accumulation may be for the governance issue, that we need more objective unbiased assumptions in liability measurements and also the strategic asset allocation setting, which create the investment portfolio not optimal or suboptimal. And also we have lack of sponsors commitments and clear risk capacity guidance policy. This could be problematic in the implementations because the pensions managers tends to be overly conservative because they are afraid to be blamed in case of any adverse market movement, because the risk guidance is not that clear. And also the return measurements and benchmark setting need to be improved following the best practices to prevent the style drift. Also the short-term behavior and behavioral biases, because some associating the loss with the risk, but actually after the risk is mitigated, we still have the residual risk in terms of loss. But in here, when loss is happen, they are afraid of being accused as mismanagement or fraud because lack of best practices investment governance. And also for the one of the problem is information asymmetry from the oversight bodies as well as from the law enforcement officers, especially one who manages the public pension fund, because they are afraid of being blamed to state finance losses, something like that. And the third problems maybe from the financial literacy to promote awareness of pension saving and life cycle investing. This is very important because currently with the shift from defined benefit program to the defined contributions program, the individual need to be their own actuaries, need to be their own investment managers and also insurers. So the awareness to accumulate the pension saving as well as the accessibility, we hear before the digitalization, we really hope that to make a pension saving is as easy as other digital products. And also the life cycle investment is need to be proposed not only to individual but also to the employer, since they have to accumulate the fund in the defined contributions for the occupational for the severance pay, which is currently they also too conservative for the employer side, when with the risk that the employee is come to retirement, the fund is not adequate to pay the severance. And for the decumulations part, we still have lack of financial literacy to improve the skill in decumulation pension pots. In the practice, we often listen the sad story of the retiree that losing their pension pot because they mismanage the pension pot in a wrong way. Sometimes they have over optimistic in manage the fund by the self business or put the investment that's not good enough. And other problems in decumulations, maybe the lack of trusted and attractive annuity products. I have talked to one of college who work in the multinational insurance company, and I asked why you don't sell the annuity product here while your headquarters have the good annuity product otherwise. The main point is that we have a lack of instruments to mitigate the asset liability mismatch, as well as other regulations, for example, for international swap and derivative association for netting jurisdiction and something like that. So they are not afraid. They are afraid that at the end they cannot fulfill the liability, and also that the trust issue on the annuity product need to be recovered, thanks to OJK that in this light of longevity risk. OJK already released the regulations that the fund has to be stay for 10 years. Currently, individuals have to follow the regulations to pay for annuity product, but due to the trust issue, they immediately redeem the fund and manage by themselves, which is sometimes it doesn't work. And now the regulations require that the fund cannot be redeemed after 10 years, but still this is give us some problems because the annuity product is not being there as a solutions. Yeah. Next, towards some recommendation of OECD draft, I'd like to make some comments. The recommendation to remove the minimum requirement for occupational pension fund to investment in government bond. This is very good for the diversifications and to overcome the concentration risk, as well as to optimize the portfolio. But given the context of Indonesia, as I mentioned before, that there is a lack of alternative solutions, alternative investments, this could be not value creating because there's a risk of asset liability mismatch and also the excessive risk taking. And also for the second recommendations, towards the gradually relaxing restrictions around the foreign investment, this is also good if the pension manager have the capacity building in the risk management, so the diversifications will create value rather than jeopardizing value. And currently Indonesia, as we hear previously, that our growth, economic growth is historically 5%, and now new presidents would like to improve until 7%. We really need the fund to finance the development, the economic development, and pensions industry could be one of the main sources to contribute in this fund that needed. Especially when in Indonesia, the yield is more attractive rather than other countries, still around 6 to 7%. And also the growth potential for the equity is also still high because the low basis. And then for the recommendations to the third one, I would like to leave. I already elaborated before. And for the develop performance benchmark and metric appropriate for long-term investment, I couldn't agree more. This is very important because, as I mentioned before, there's some agency problems that the pensions managers, we are afraid of being blamed of the loss in case of in adverse market movement. But take into account that the talent is not that competent, I think that regulator need more standard or more detail guidance, but yet still give some flexibility because no one size fits all metrics, right? And currently, I also the advocacy chair from the CFA Society Indonesia, and already been involved in the focus group discussions held by the Indonesia Financial Badan BKF, ya, a financial agency, financial policy agency, in drafting the omnibus law in the pension law, in the pension cluster, and we already put there some global best practices from CFA Institute Global Investment Performance Standard, like the measurement on returns, and also the setting benchmark, as well as on the cut losses. And also in the new law, this mandated that regulators have some appointed actuary, so it can also in the practice give some control. And my last slide is towards these recommendations to increase the contributions to BPJS pension guarantee schemes to ensure the sustainability. I couldn't agree more, because as your presentation before, our retention rate is very low, around 14%, when the ILO ideal is around 40%. So this, what OJK mentions, manfaat pensiun tambahan, additional mandatory, additional mandatory pensions is push individual to save current income to be smooth in the post-employment benefit. And as I also be part of the employer pension funds, I also happy to hear that in the draft of the government regulations about the pension harmonizations, the employer pension funds still have some room to contribute, and it's good for the diversifications, both in the providers aspect as well as in the pension pot, where the BPJS pension guarantee is focused on the basic protections, and also the second layer is to return enhancements at the manageable risk is held by the employer pension that meet some criteria. And also for the second recommendations, the strengthen requirement around the assumptions used to value liabilities, and also calculate funding for voluntary occupational DB plans. Recently, the Ministry State of Enterprises already give some clear guidance to the state-owned enterprises who establish the defined benefit pension fund to be more conservative in setting the actuarial rate as well as the mortality rate. And also, as I mentioned before, in the pension law is mandated that regulator have some appointed actuary, so it could give a better monitoring for the actuaries practice for customer retentions practices that could jeopardize the objective and unbiased opinion on the liability measurements. And for the last recommendation that I would like to give some comments is about the implication of introducing the pension protection fund to guarantee DB pension promises in the case of sponsor default. This is, I think, is a good if it could be implemented properly, but we have to be aware of the risk, which the pensions could be more expensive and unaffordable because they have to pay some premiums on that, and also since the payoff is not symmetric, asymmetric between the pension guarantor and also the sponsor, it could be happen the moral hazard in terms of excessive risk taking that could be burden the guarantors. That's for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We had a chance to listen to 3 different angles of the for the same topics. That's maybe a few observations from my side. Importance of financial literacy is very important because it could partially solve also this information balance, because if you deliver the information to the customers and they're unable to understand them, it doesn't matter, you know. And also the education, how to that they should to take care about the retirement, it's important, and it should to be the special policy about this topic. What about lack of products. I think that a lot of us from the Europe, we can congratulate you that you are increasing the GDP, decreasing a relatively stable inflation, but still, that's if you ask why the insurance doesn't offer such a wider range of the products, because sometimes the expectation is again come back for the financial literacy. The calculations and expectations are totally out of the actuarial point of view, that people easily dividing the sum between the average longevity and divided 12 and forget for the mortality, and this is also what we should to explain them. And maybe about the strict regulations, that's I am maybe a little bit fan for the role of the key responsibility to key person and to leave the little bit more freedom about the investment decision. It should be clear, it should be very transparent, but otherwise if regulator to prescribe the investment strategy in the such big details, that it could be finally victim for the losses, but it's for discussion. But we have a limited time, very limited time, but I would like to ask all of you, if you have only one choice, what you suggest to change as the first one in your system? Jessica, I leave the floor to you, because you have a chance to listen also the participants, and you can read a little bit things to give the diplomatic answer.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the point on coherence of the system, and I think this is another point that Ms. Sidi also touched upon, because we have this mandatory aspect of the Indonesian system, the defined contribution portion that has quite a lot of flexibility in terms of when you can withdraw savings and getting paid as a lump sum rather than a lifetime income, whereas the objective of that plan is really to finance the purpose is, and the why it was set up is to finance the basic income. So I think the design overall needs to be more coherent with that objective. Whereas on the voluntary side, I feel like you have more restrictions even on withdrawals and payouts than even the mandatory plan. So just a reframing of what the objectives of each component of the system is, and making sure the design of that component is coherent with what you want that to achieve in the system.
Thank you. The next one.
Yeah, I think agree. I think what I'm thinking as well is that if we can introduce this life cycling understanding, that will unlock the understanding of the need of the retirement going forward, and that would also unlock the understanding of the emerging risks, long-term care, hospitalization, and also the need for live in a decent way when you retire. As mentioned before, we try to put some flavor on the regulation, but we also don't think that regulation can solve everything.
Yeah.
Because then you will squeeze the market and there is no dynamic in there. So I think, for example, what we introduced before, as mentioned Ibu Siti before, on the annuity side, what the practice in the market is that the retiree, they just invest the part of the DC benefit and then invest in the annuity, but then after 3 months, they cash in the cash value, they take the cash value. For the life insurance company, this is good because then they are not exposed to the longer risk, but for these pensioner, retirees, they actually don't get the benefit because then when they get a significant amount of money, they think of other things. They don't think of the living well in the longer period. So I think on the pension fund, I think we need to make sure that we drive the need for the retiree by allowing that, in our case, we try to extend from 0 to at least 10 years with the hope that the retiree now understanding that they need they need money more to fund for their retirement. And
Ah.
that life cycle, I think, could trigger that one.
Okay, that now, Thiti, you have a final words, and you can tell what you wish from your regulator to the crucial changes, and it's done.
I would say that for the public pension funds, which is the problem, is mostly for the governance issue. The government, the regulator would like to monitor the implementations of the law, pension law in the omnibus law, which is already good design, well designed to remove the disincentive to invest in a more optimal investments. For example, for the cut loss, for the benchmark setting, as well as the return measurements, because it means a lot in the practical, because the agency problems will like to allocate the resource in favor for them. And for the employer pension fund is currently there's a shifting trend from the defined benefit and defined contributions, and we hope that the employer could make it more proactive, so rather than reactive, so it could be smoothened, and also along the way, along that transfers, they could educate the employer how to mitigate the pension well. And for the informal worker and also the gig employment needs need financial literacy for life cycling awareness, the access, easy of access, and the life cycle investings. Maybe we could add, Pak Iwan, to the school curriculum for when the child from the elementary or junior high school, the importance of this pension saving, because currently we are lucky we still have the bonus demographic, but it's soon predicted to be peaking out, so we don't want to be older before richer.
Thank you very much. Due to time reason, we cannot to go deeper, but it was a real pleasure to discuss with you, and I believe that we little bit, all of us, to improve our knowledges, and together we can continue with improving the system, taking the lesson learned from the other institution, and I wish you a good luck for the development of your system, and thank you for to be in my panel.
Thank you so much for a very insightful and valuable session that we have together with the moderator and speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please give applause once again to our first panel discussion regarding to the asset-backed pensions in Indonesia, policy and supervisory challenges and solutions. And now, moving on to our next panel discussion, it is discussion about pension funds, long-term investment, and development of capital markets. So once again, would like to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, as we have a very limited time, but we will try our best to organize the time, so we will have a Q&A session. You can scan the barcode that we have a Slido applications. You can write your questions, and if we have a time, a moderator will read your questions to the panelists on stage. So let us moving on to our next panel discussion. It is my pleasure to invite the moderator. Please welcome on stage the Director of the Financial and Enterprise Affairs Directorate OECD. Please welcome Dr. Carmine Di Noia.
Okay, so first of all, wake up. We'll try to be a bit, lively. We have also limited scale timing because we have to finish by 4, I guess, because I think you are also interested in the following session, actually, where we're going tonight for getting some, I think, some interesting, sightseeing and food and drink. But we want to discuss in this session, in this panel, the role of pension funds as also long-term investment, and so the role in the development of capital markets. We are giving you we hope, some food for thought from the stage, but also I see some food not for thought that is coming to your tables. Now, pension funds are often, are the anchors of our capital markets, and they are always perceived, this long-term, so grounded and steadfast in the long-term focus. But also, these anchors are not just there, static, just holding the fort. They are actively also navigating the tides and helping markets stay, steady during both, calm but also stormy waters. And maybe climate, I heard some noise from outside, but I hope weather will improve for tonight. So with ongoing, and we have seen also in these years for also unfortunate reasons, both, COVID, wars, and others. And so ongoing economic shifts, and also for our role, for our discussion here, a lot of demographic changes which are impacting, the role of pension funds is more essential than ever. And so to unlock their potential, it's important to align incentives and also regulatory frameworks. And in particular, on the one side, by holding their role, by holding long-term positions, pension funds can smoothen the cycle, as economists say, so calm the market, jitters, serving as the the steady hand during economic ups and downs, and so providing a counterbalance to short-term swings. But also, we have mentioned this morning a bit at the opening, basically their influence over investee companies is powerful enough to drive hopefully improved corporate governance practices, accountability and sustainability. And also this is also the work we are doing at the OECD, joining sort of on the one side the pension work, but also the corporate governance work on that. So however, and this will be the topic of the panel, so for pension funds to do their their best work, so capital markets need to play their part too, and this means offering on one side a regulatory environment that's not only robust but also welcoming. Okay, so a place where really pension funds feel at home. So this session will dive into the incentives, regulatory support, and market conditions that can help pension funds deepen their contribution to stable, well-governed, and resilient, the magic word, the resilient market. So before launching the discussion, let me introduce our panelists who have a rich experience, but also bring diverse perspectives in this area. So today, we will be hearing first, please come on stage, Ms. Erna Motinga, so Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Namibia Financial Institution Supervisory Authority. Nafisa, welcome. Applause. Hello. Mr. Ali Kavara, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary, Department of Labor, United States, outgoing IOPS Vice President. Welcome, Ali. And Mr. Tomislav Rizdak, Deputy President of the Board of Croatian Financial Services Supervisory Agency, HANFA. So we will have, like before, maybe we'll try to have your presentation, comments in around 10 minutes. So let's try to keep it also lively. And if we have time, also we are opening for Slido, and so it would be nice to have maybe your comments also during the presentation. So let's start, Erna, please, from you. I mean, perspective also from pension funds in Namibia, how they're supporting the expansion also of local, financial markets, but also maybe the role in better corporate governance. Erna, to you.
Thank you so much, Kamin. Good afternoon, everybody. I have some slides, and I'm wondering where the remote is. Ah, this is it. Thank you so much. So, Kamin and I agree that pension funds are really anchors for capital markets and capital market developments and deepening of capital markets. And in Namibia, we are acutely aware of the fact that a developed economy relies on a well-functioning financial system to, of course, facilitate financial intermediation, where funds are efficiently transferred from net savers to net borrowers, from those that are saving to those that identifies ideal opportunities in an economy sort of mine those opportunities that they find in the market. And so in the absence of well-functioning financial systems, the matching between funders and borrowers, therefore, is difficult, and that will lead to economic growth that will eventually suffer under that. And so, likewise, deepening of the financial markets is equally important because a well-functioning financial system would enable us to sort of improve efficiencies in the markets. It will enable us to deepen the markets. It will enable us to get markets more broad in terms of the offerings and also rich in terms of access. So in Namibia, we have literally looked at how do we then ensure a two-pronged approach around economic development, but also deepening of financial markets. And you'd see in terms of the outline, I've roughly speak to the first point, and I have more detailed slides that I hope you also to share with us. So in terms of financial deepening and development of capital markets, what is it that we have done? So what is it that we have done as Namibia? We have used the national development documents from the development plan 1 through to 5. We are now in the process of analyzing 6. And we have used other developmental plans in our economy, like the Vision 2030, the Harambee Prosperity Plan. And the underpinnings in all those plans were really, how do we develop the economy, but not just the economy, how do we ensure that we grow the cake large enough to create jobs? Because we probably, as the rest of Africa, is struggling with unemployment. So our policymakers were looking at, so develop the economy is on the one end, the other end really is deepening of the financial markets. If you look at Namibia in the primary listed stocks, which are, as of today, 12 in terms of number, investable assets are few. And so we have then crafted as a tripartite party between the central bank, us as the non-bank regulator, and the Ministry of Finance, what we call the Namibian Financial Sector Strategy, which has key underpinnings around financial deepening, financial safety nets, inclusion, localization, which is something that we struggle with, and skills development. And that has helped us as sort of policymakers to come up with tools in the sense of regulations to sort of look at this two-pronged dilemma that we set with at that time. So in crafting the financial sector strategy, what are some of the lessons that we've learned from the world? We said that there is no single recipe for developing capital markets. Each country, therefore, needs to tailor its development plan to its circumstances, like Namibia, very shallow capital markets, unemployment rate that is high, economic development that is not at the optimal. So we crafted the national development plans, the financial sector strategy, and then we came to a point where we have said, you know, as savings, national savings, we have pension fund assets, the largest amount of savings in our jurisdiction. And it moved at independence in 1990 from 53% of GDP to about 101.8% of GDP. So by all means, for our jurisdiction, this is large. And we've looked at illiquid markets. So where we said Namibian capital markets are illiquid, it is forcing institutional investors in investing outside of the country, and that's not helping our own ideals as a sovereign state. So what is it that we did? The first thing we tried out was to allow pension funds to go ahead and invest in the real economy. And with that, largely our biggest pension fund, which is the government institutions pension fund, literally went out and they started what they call the Development Capital Program. We have taken serious learnings and beatings from that initiative. That was our first try. In terms of the second try, we said, we know the real value of allowing investments in alternative instruments, alternative markets, because at the end, we would like to use these investments to graduate and to exit through the stock exchange, and with that, allowing for more investable assets on the stock exchange. So we have looked at a version and a version 2 sort of regulation 13.5 that literally compels pension funds and long-term asset investments, long-term insurance institutions to invest a minimum of 1.75 and a maximum of 3.5. And I know the issues around prescribing minimums. That's where we are at. And unlisted investments, therefore, for us meant that institutional investors could invest through debt or through equity capital in Namibian private companies. How did we do that? We have sort of strengthened governance around how these funds would be invested. Governance was important because besides our aim as a country to enlarge the cake, to create employment, we had another ideal around deepening the market, but also ensuring that the risk and reward relationship for members of pension funds was sacrosanct. We wanted funds to make money and to give the best benefits to their members by the time of retirement. So we have decided to bring this entire value chain into the regulatory ambit of the regulator and the supervisor. So the investor is regulated, licensed, regulated, and supervised by our non-banking institutional regulatory authority, and so is the special purpose vehicle, which is like acting as a shell company where funds are held, and so is the unlisted investment manager, and of course the portfolio company is outside. But we have made sure that the portfolio company that is on the outside, that we have strengthened the participation and influence over these entities. So what are some of the things that we have done? We have sort of ensured that there is governance structures, the board structures in terms of who represents the investor on the SPV or in terms of the unlisted investment manager is sound, and the next step was that the unlisted investment manager would sort of have somebody to participate in management decisions of the investee company to strengthen governance there. So allowing for board of directors, one representative from the UIM, depending on the number of shares that were held, UIM itself having board of directors and trustees that we would, as regulators, check in terms of propriety and fitness, whether they can actually serve as a board of trustees, and the same with the special purpose vehicle. So in terms of impact, what is it that we have seen so far? So I've spoken about floors and ceilings. So the floor at 1.75, the ceiling at 3.5, that's how we have invested. We see that the invested capital and the actual drawdown is only about 1.4% of the committed capital of about 2.2%. So committed capital funds and institutional investors is only committed 2.2%. The ceiling is at 3.5%, but the actual drawdown has only been 1.4%. And so when industry came back to us and asked us to lift the ceiling, we have looked at the impact and said, I mean, there's absolutely no consensus from where we sit as regulators and as policymakers to up the ceiling, because there is so much funds that are floating. And we know that for those investing companies that has taken care of the debt investments, they've probably done much better because they have focused on brownfields, already existing entities that were cash generative, and very little look at pipeline and greenfields that will actually allow us to grow the economic cake as we intended. So in terms of employment creation, or in terms of investments, this is how it looks. 15% invested in manufacturing, but again in greenfields, brownfields. We have seen renewable energy, education at about 11%. Employment creation has not been that great. We have created a couple of thousands in terms of jobs, and a little more in terms of temporary employment, but nothing that is lasting, because the structure of the economy hasn't been changed as we would want it to be from this unlisted investment sort of era that we are in. What were the constraints? Some of the constraint issues really is in terms of business regulation and licensing, where cost of regulation has been deemed to be very high. We are 104 out of 190 countries when it comes to ease of doing business. We are talking about crime and corruption. I mean, the statistics are saying that we are ranking at 59th on the list globally. I'm not convinced. I think we're doing very well in terms of crime and corruption in comparative terms. We look at regulatory constraints. I mean, the 1% co-investment in terms of contributed capital that must come from the UIMs. The difficult thing, and probably the largest thing, was the ability for unlisted investment managers to secure a pipeline that's workable, to secure investable projects within the country, and taking the risk. And I must say, I mean, bravado in terms of just stepping out and taking the risk and see whether it's something that can work or not. So we have learned a few lessons. Employment creation was not great. We need to do something else about it. The industry remains illiquid. Skill shortages, a workable pipeline remains an issue. We have one anchor institutional investor, which is the Government Institutions Pension Fund, and for unlisted investment managers, if you don't have a cut from the GIPF, I mean, it certainly doesn't make sense for you to be in the business. And then we have introduced in the regulation stringent fit and proper requirements that we need to now reintroduce. I think we have done quite a bit on governance, and that's going well. And then allow for clear transition processes following the deregistration of a UIM and or SPV to prevent regulatory laguna, because we have sort of deregistered some of the UIMs without thinking around where the funds would be placed, who would take care of the assets that were already placed with these guys. So some of those were the gaps. But from our perspective, we know that it's crucial for institutional investors to provide capital because job creation is a key thing. Our youth unemployment rates are between 30% and 40% as we speak. We need to stimulate the Namibian economy a bit more. We have a nascent oil and gas industry, and we remain hopeful. There's collaboration that we need to require so that we sort of do better in terms of what the market needs, what's workable, what's the practice, and then policy enhancement to allow certainty. That's sort of the Namibian story.
Thank you very much. I mean, very, very important, very interesting. So on the one side, macro, the role of pension fund institutional investors for development in general, economic growth and market, but also so is a chicken and egg issue, because on the one side, if they are not there, markets are illiquid, they do not invest in domestic market. People go, abroad, but then if they go on the market, then there is more liquidity. And then this is also related to the previous panel. I mean, in terms of, incentives or disincentives to invest or obligation in a domestic market or in foreign market, and there are pros and cons. And maybe Ali, so we go for in another continent. These also can your perspective also on that, and also on the contribution that also to to the development that they can have, keeping always in mind that this is a big debate also in courts in the US, even more general for asset managers, that then in the end is the returns that should drive also investment by institutional investors. Ali, please.
Thank you, Carmine, and thank you to Ojeka and the IOP staff as well for the invitation. I maybe just want to start by being very transparent, because I come to this from a very different perspective. When I started in my current role, I inherited a very deep and very wide capital market. So these are not things that are kind of at the front of my mind, that we are concerned in the US about how can we deepen the capital markets. Just the slice of the the markets that we oversee are about 13 or 14 trillion US dollars. If you factor in other government pension schemes that we don't have jurisdiction over, you kind of double that number. So I will get back to that because I think there's some important lessons to pull from that. But one thing, maybe before I turn to this very important question, is the precondition for all of this is some of the other things that we think about in the pension context, right? How are we thinking about adequacy? How are we thinking about the comprehensiveness of the coverage of the system? Because none of this is going to work if you don't first have the precondition of people saving and building that asset base. So for me, when I think about this question, I think it's actually very fascinating because there's a tension that I think we need to address. On the one hand, there's a very strong desire in many jurisdictions to use this pool of assets and these investors to really help the capital markets domestically mature, and that's a very important national interest. If you kind of pretend that that national interest didn't exist and you only wear the pension supervisor hats that we all have, and you think about this question, that's where this tension comes in, because as a pension supervisor, very often the question that we're asking is, how are you focused on delivering the best financial return for the members of the scheme? How are you diversifying? And if you're very focused and exclusively focused on this question of development of capital markets, then there are going to be any number of circumstances where the immature capital market is volatile, it's producing lower returns, and you're sacrificing those returns in order to serve another goal. And that tension, I think, is important to call out. But I don't think that means it's hopeless. I think there's actually a lot that can happen, and I found the prior presentations in the prior panel very interesting because I think it really touched on a lot of the things that were coming to mind for me. I think one thing to think about as supervisors is how we can influence the conditions of the market, in particular the regulatory framework, how you can ensure that there's more stability, principles like rule of law, transparency and increasing transparency, because particularly for foreign investors, that's going to be a very important factor in how they feel about investing in the market. Also thinking about, we're in this room today because we all believe in cooperation internationally, but it's not a principle that we should forget when we get home. And so there are other regulators that also you should be focused on. Securities regulators, banking regulators, how are you working with them to enhance the governance standards in the markets that you have? How are you thinking about, just to highlight prior work of the OECD, there's a paper that Jessica was the author of about actuarial principles that you can apply within your jurisdictions, right? How are you utilizing those tools to help mature the market and create the right conditions so that it's not happening because this is a sovereign principle, it's happening because it is the right market response, right? It's the financially correct response. And the other piece of this that I was just thinking about is that the opportunity for this sector to really be engaged in capacity building. And I mean that in a few different ways. One is that, I think actually, and this is true in the US context, when we are engaged in enforcement, particularly with smaller or medium-sized schemes that have, I don't mean this pejoratively, but perhaps lower levels of sophistication, one of the things that we are doing when we're going in and conducting an investigation is educating those trustees about what their obligations are, how they should be going about things. And the hope is that you don't have to go back in a year later because they've made the same mistakes, but you've actually increased their capacity, you've helped them think about what their role is in a different way, and they're going to carry that forward. Similarly, those funds themselves, as they're interacting with the capital markets, they can place demands and expectations and educate companies that they're working with, for example. So if they're, we were just heard about the example of unlisted assets, right? How do you have these hopefully more sophisticated investors that are in charge of large pools of capital in your country? How do you have them engaged to help develop the market? And a lot of this actually comes back to what we see in the OECD core principles of private pension regulation, because as you go through that, it really is, it is designed for private pension regulation, but there's kind of a implicit in each one of the principles, you know, how you can use private pensions to enhance capital markets and deepen capital markets, because, you know, even the first principle about the conditions for effective regulation, and when you read through that principle, it has a lot of these themes kind of woven throughout it. And so that's another piece of this. But I want to close by actually going back to where I started, which is, you know, when you think about the US market and the fact that we have these very large pools of assets, part of why that becomes so significant is because, you know, using the example of decumulation that we heard about from the Indonesian regulators, part of what pension funds can do, in addition to the capacity building and all the other things, is they can create the demand for certain kinds of products. And once you have sufficient pools of capital, the market actually will respond to that because it is attractive. So part of why we don't need to think about it is because the assets under management overall in the market for us are so large that where there's a need, there becomes a huge market incentive. We don't have to kind of force people, okay, here are the products that you now are going to have to offer, because there will be profit, and if the existing players don't move in, there's an incentive for entry to new actors.
Thank you. Thank you, Ali, of this perspective, because obviously the role of at the OECD we see, and we have also been working in the directorate putting together, I would say, supply demand institutional framework, and obviously the role of important, you know, institutional investors, and this goes well then to Timoslav, that there is now a big debate also in Europe, in the EU27 of even there was this discussion these years about capital markets union, now the renaming, not only because it's more, you know, attractive, sexy, catchy, but it's savings and investments union. So the idea actually that also citizens, taxpayers, they do participate in the growth, and then so investment and direct and indirect participation to markets, even through so institutional investors and pension funds, is the growth of a country, but that goes through your interest, of you, your kids, your future, your pension. But then one, let's say, I wouldn't say risk, but also now from the Croatian perspective, and this again is linked to maybe a big amount suddenly of investment that may go maybe to a small, you know, market. Again, is catch-22, no? The risk is that maybe of the unintended consequence, maybe of you know, over-evaluation, pricing going up. So again, is pros and cons. So how, you know, you from your side you see the situation of a, you know, important, again, also single regulator, which is of capital markets and also of pensions. Please.
Thank you for this introduction. First of all, also thanks to the organizers for inviting me here. If I could get my slides, that would be great. So while we are waiting for the slides, basically, so the title.
And also, I think the mic is not really working.
It's not working. Maybe is it better now? Is this better? Yes. Okay, cool, great. Okay, so first I'll talk about the title a bit. So this goes to Carmene's discussion, also the discussions that we had here, for whom the pension managers work actually. I think we are a good example case of this, because we are a country that went from relatively closed economy, closed financial markets, to very open economy and very open financial markets. And also our pension reform, when it started in 2002, it was most of the investments were, not most, but all of the investments were domestic. And also when the pension reform was introduced, there is I mean, it was in Croatia, but it's not only Croatia. In many countries, you have also the not only a goal of providing decent pensions, but you always mention something else. You know, developing capital markets, increasing domestic investments, financing growth, and so on and so forth, as we have heard today, and also in previous session as well. So basically, so I'll talk about the Croatian experience with this. This is like a short introduction. Then I'll show some evidence that we have given the Croatian example, and I'll also talk a bit about home bias in investment that Carmine also mentioned. I think it's also important, and I'll try to look at all these things somehow in a very nuanced way. So not giving maybe just going into one direction, but somehow thinking and showing you how this evolved in Croatia through time. So in this slide, these are some of the, let's say, quotes that we had in the discussion about pension funds in Croatia in recent years. You know, so what are some benefits and some costs or some pluses and minuses of diversifying or diversifying internationally or developing capital markets with pension funds money and so on and so forth. I think these are quite, I mean, they go quite well with what we have heard, and I think they're quite universal. So for example, one thing is that we mentioned many times in this forum is accessible capital for development of domestic companies. However, there is this home bias problem. I mean, you should probably diversify risks, but also opportunities. You know, if your economy is not growing very well, or not only that, but sometimes you have a shock that can hit only your economy. International diversification can help with that. We heard a lot also about developing domestic capital markets, but not only that, developing skills of financial intermediaries, having the full capital market and similar. However, for me as a supervisor, I think this is very difficult to supervise. I mean, domestic investments are much more difficult to supervise than foreign investments. There are various conflicts of interest, and when you talk about white-collar crime, it's not easy to detect, especially for a financial supervisor. This goes way beyond financial supervisor. There can be various links between, you know, company officials and fund officials and things which you cannot easily see as a financial supervisor. So this requires really strong judiciary, but not also judiciary, you know, like not only financial supervisors, but also, you know, like criminal supervisors and things like that. So it's I think this is something to think about. Also, there is one point, you know, the money from the people should be used to develop domestic economy, which is a very strong point, especially when you talk with politicians. You know, they always want to see, you know, what are we going to do with this money? We need to have some benefit. You know, it's because 30 years from now, when people are going to retire, I mean, it's like 5 or 6 hour mandates, and we don't think about that. We think about what's going to happen today. And then there is this view from the other side. One should sue everyone who pushes pension funds to domestically, you know. Yeah, I mean, this is something, you know, if you're pushing somebody to do something, you know, again, we're going back to the previous point, you know, there are various conflicts of interest. I'm not going to repeat myself in the interest of time. Then there is also, I would say, quite powerful thing, that's limited knowledge of foreign markets, you know. One of the reasons for home bias is not only that, you know, people are pushed to invest domestically, it's because the fund managers and the asset managers and the trustees, they know the domestic markets best. You know, it's difficult to find a good investment manager. It's difficult to find a good investment. Maybe if you want to invest from Croatia to, I don't know, to Namibia, for example. You know, yeah, I think it's something that's not so easy. You know, and then again, there's a strong case against investing only in domestic markets, and that's that domestic markets can become too small. Not always, but they can become too small, and in many instances they become too small. And I'll show that on Croatian example as well. So yeah, so this is something that we have in our law. Basically, if a pension company is to invest in an equity, it has to be listed. You know, so these are, let's say, in the last couple of years, all the listings that we had where the pension companies were the majority owner, and they go. I mean, there are various sectors from tourism, some industry, some real estate, logistics. Energy companies and so on, so various companies, you know, and again, they were listed because the pension funds were the majority holders and they had to be listed. Yeah, that's it pretty much. And this slide is going to show what are, let's say, the effects on the capital market. So I have actually, maybe the more interesting is this left panel. So this basically shows the ratio of turnover to capitalization for the market, for the companies in the stock market index actually, which is Grobex. And this bottom line is the ratio of turnover to capitalization for these companies that were listed, for these 11 companies that were listed due to the fact that they were invested by pension funds. So you see, basically, this did not contribute actually a lot to a raising turnover, because pension funds are usually, and in this case as well, they are buy and hold investors, so they are not actually trading these stocks a lot. And then there's additional feature of the Croatian system, and that is that we have actually only 4+1 pension managers. So 4 obligatory, one that does only, these 4 do obligatory and voluntary pension funds, and this one does only voluntary pension funds. So the number of the managers is not that big, you know. So there is no, you know, like change of hands for the stocks, you know. So it's something that's you buy and hold, and that's it. You wait either like a dividend player or maybe sell it to some other investor, you know, some other big investor. So this did, in our case, this requirement didn't bring any additional trading actually. But what did it do? What was positive? It contributed to better corporate governance. So this is this is somehow average, actually weighted average of the compliance score for the corporate governance for the companies where the pension funds are significant investors, and for the whole of the market, you know. So you can see that corporate governance is significantly higher in the companies where pension funds are investors, which is, I think, something you should expect. And I think the pension funds are doing their job okay in this respect. You know, they are, you know, I think they bring, you know, some expertise, some financial expertise, and also some corporate governance expertise. And this actually, I think, it makes these companies better. And this is now actually my almost last slide, and it talks about the home bias I mentioned. So I mentioned that the Croatian system, when we started in 2002, so this is not on this graph, this is from 2015, we had only domestic investments, you know. And this was, again, as the pension reform was, the goal was not only to increase pensions, but what was also to develop domestic economy, capital markets, and so on and so forth. So it was somehow expected that you should invest domestically. However, as the pension funds grew, you know, we started with 0, you know, in 2002, and now we have like 24 billion, which is roughly 1/3 of the domestic GDP, you know. So, and the capital market is relatively small, especially compared to the pension funds. So as the time progressed, you know, pension funds gradually shifted their attention and their investments outside of Croatian market. This we have 3 graphs here because this is category A, B, and C. These are the pension funds. They are divided with respect to the risk category. So the A1 is the most riskiest one, and the C1 is the least riskiest one. Yeah. So, and this is, and maybe Croatia is also a special example in a way, because we went through all this international integration. So I said we were pretty much standalone country in 2002 when the pension reform started. Now we are members of the European Union, European Monetary Union, and many other organizations. So for us, it also has an effect on these investments as well. Yeah. So in the end, I'll just summarize very quickly, not to lose too much time. And that's, I think, you know, I think we said that pension reform sometimes includes additional goals, you know, so financing domestic development, developing capital markets, infrastructural investments, and so on and so forth. We all know, and especially in many jurisdictions, we are not all coming from the same from the same starting point, as Ali mentioned nicely. These goals, I think, are important, but I think the prime goal should be benefit to the end users. You know, I think we should focus on that, and that is the main point of the pension reform in the end. I also just want to say one word about geographical diversification. I think it helps to insulate against domestic shocks, but it also includes risks, in a way, 2 major risks, you know. What happens, for example, if you are, let's say, you're a policymaker, you're pushing for a strong international diversification, and then in the end, you know, your domestic market has great returns, you know, I don't know, and then, I don't know, somewhere in the US there is a crisis and you're losing a lot of money, you know. So So that's something to think about as a policymaker, you know. And also, as I mentioned, experience with foreign markets is also very important for the asset managers and for the pension fund managers when we think about geographical diversification. But just to be on the safe side, I think that geographical diversification is very, very important for the funds. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Very, very interesting. So we have some time for questions. So you can, with the QR code, you can on Slido, you can put your question. I guess we can safely say that the first one to put a question can have an extra bag, the gift that we are giving to, so you can bring 2 back home. And in the meantime, so we will wait for question. Oh, I think that. Maybe I will do a test for you, because imagine if I ask you, especially for non-European people, which is the number, the stock exchange with the largest number of listed companies in Europe, in EU27. I give you 3 options. So German, I mean it's Frankfurt, Deutsche Börse, German stock exchange, Paris Bourse, the French stock exchange, or the Swedish stock exchange. So let's say who thinks that the exchange with the largest number of the greatest number of listed companies is Germany? Please raise your hand. There is nothing to lose. Also, especially non-European, I want to raise your hand. So wake up, we can bring some more coffee, please. And no one wants, okay, 1 for Germany. France. Okay, how many vote for France? So there is a total abstention, I see, from this continent. And how many vote for Sweden? Okay, but there are many European. Now, actually, you may, if you do this test in Europe, everyone would be probably wrong, but the wise people here. Actually, is the Stockholm, the Swedish Stock Exchange, which has the largest number of listed companies. Why? You know, a small country, less than 10 million people. Why? Actually, because there is the strong participation, actually, of direct and indirect participation of pension funds, insurance, and directly of citizens, of taxpayers, you know, to the market. Also, I have to say, through tax incentive. And this has developed a lot the market. And this goes to last point of Tomislav. We can put the question your way or the other way around. So maybe, I mean, again, is a chicken and egg. So when you have maybe a small market and then you have this idea, this recommendation, this obligation to put, you know, to invest on the domestic market, okay, is there the opposite risk that then you may have, again, if it's a supply and demand, so that you may have that apparently the return maybe in the short, even medium term could be higher, but then this is pushed by the limited, you know, amount of company. And this also leads to, again, maybe a point that was also before, I think in the excellent panel before, that pension, you know, for holder and investors, but also as direct investors. So the topic of financial appropriate, you know, financial education, financial literacy, understanding the benefit of going there. So I don't know, maybe also points and waiting if again we have if you are not confident for Slido, you can do the old way to raise the hands, which shows that Julia doesn't like Slido, but okay, yeah, they want to oblige you to ask through Slido. So just raise your hand if you want to make a comment, a question, a criticism of you just want us to shut up and go immediately home.
Firstly,
please, Julia.
I would like to express that I like the Slido because I don't know if you know this, but Slido was invented in the Slovakia and was successfully...
Great, a big applause to Slido
was
and Slovakia.
Sold to international company, that it was a nice example for the startup. This is, but
and it's heavily invested by a pension fund from Slovakia.
But I have a problem with the connection, but it's another problem. But maybe there is a questions also for the Ali and also for the Thomas, that in my country, because we have a relatively small markets with a huge offer from the bank financing, we already passed 3 or 4 capital market strategy which try to improve the markets, but we still have I think that a lot of banking finance, and I am a little bit skeptic, but come back for the investment that in my country was decided that the ETF is a way how to invest passively with relatively good profits, and I would like to maybe from the three of you, if you think that this is the way, if it is good for the small markets, or you can reach the higher profits, and what is your opinion about this passive strategy of investment, and also if the ETF could have a, I have opinion that not yet, but influence for the development of capital market. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. We give the floor to our, okay, maybe we can get some questions. Also, I have to remind people who got the batik for free that actually there was the instruction. You have to ask questions in panels during the global forums. Otherwise, they will be taken away. But please,
okay,
identify yourself for the audience.
Okay, my name is Grace Muradziko. I'm from Zimbabwe. So I appreciate the need to diversify investments, but does it necessarily follow that offshore investments will give you a better return and low risk? I actually want to hear about practical experiences. The offshore investments, are they necessarily giving you better returns and lower risk? Thank you.
Other comments in this first round, questions, criticisms, please. Please, a mic there.
Okay, yeah, here.
You see, he has not a batik, so but.
Hello, I'm Eric Chang from MPFA of Hong Kong, China, and I have a question to Tomislav. I noticed that there is strong home bias in the current investment in the Croatian pension system. To what extent this is driven by concern about exchange rate risk among investment managers as well as scheme members? Thank you.
Okay, let's start with maybe a first round of answers, and I see that the fear of losing the batik has now pushed for some questions here. Please.
I'd like to speak to the question raised by Dr. Grace around offshore returns. So in our experience, we have seen that diversification is the key. I mean, our local pension funds are invested in terms of prescribed minimums. They're supposed to invest about 45% in domestic assets. They are sitting at roughly 51%. So that says something about what they see in the market and what they invest for. And then we have about 32% invested in offshore markets. And about 15% in the CMA, the Common Monetary Area in Africa, that's largely on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and about 2.3% in the rest of Africa. So I think the idea is to diversify as far and as wide as possible to maximize returns, at least from our perspective. That is what we have seen. I do not think that offshore only is the way to go. I've also not seen that those returns are largely outperforming domestic returns that we have seen, especially in the Namibian market. So I think there's value for a strategy that sort of combines domestic, offshore, and in the rest of Africa. I would respond on that question.
You can, yeah, if you want, you have also.
Well, obviously there's pros and cons with any of these things, but I think what is it that you are solving for as a country? What is it that you are solving for as a nation? And in our perspective, we had a two-pronged approach. We needed to solve for economic development. We needed to solve for employment creation on the one end, and on the other end, we needed to solve for deepening of the capital markets. I think it's early days in terms of deepening of the capital markets. We have seen quite a number of projects coming through. We are hoping to see much more through the renewable energy and the energy sector that is booming currently in terms of eventually deepening the markets. I think we are taking lessons and we're improving as we're going. We are currently in version 2 of what we're trying out, of unlisted, with the idea to exit on the National Stock Exchange and therefore broadening the base there. So yeah, I think it will eventually provide the results that we're looking for.
Thank you, Ali. Maybe comment,
Yeah,
and
so
also maybe the IOPS,
yeah,
given the US.
so maybe starting with Julia's question, I think there are, potential tax efficiencies and cost efficiencies with ETFs and passive investing. Absolutely, I think the question I think I would ask if I were in your shoes is, if your institutional investors are not engaged in active management in particular, and the engagement with companies, are you losing out on potential returns that they could generate by the governance standards that they impose, for example, that would result in those investments performing better? That I think is the balance in the trade. And then you wanted so for Jackson, the question is, what is the view of IOPS on pension protection funds and essentially moral hazard, that there'll be mismanagement or non-remittance because there's this backstop. So I'm going to start with the very good news. As Carmine said, I'm the outgoing vice president, so I'm not going to speak on behalf of IOPS whatsoever. I don't know what IOPS's view is. I would observe that I think programs like government backstops, like pension protection funds, can be very important because companies will fail, and you will need programs like that to ensure that retirees are able to enjoy financial security in old age. Having said that, I think the way you address these problems of moral hazard is by the work that we all do as pension supervisors. It's the enforcement programs, the risk-based supervision that you're doing kind of before you reach those funds stepping in to prevent these kinds of problems.
Thank you, Ali. Before Tomislav, we may have still time for one or two comments or questions. Okay, Tomislav first, and then we go back to the audience.
Okay, great. Yeah. So first, regarding the ETF, I mean, in addition to agreeing with Ali, I would just add one more thing. If you think about the ETF as a pension option, which is actually, there is a Slovak company offering this also in Croatia. So maybe that was the reason of your question. I'm not so sure. So I think it depends on the end user. Some end users can withstand the decline of 30%. For an unmanaged product. Like ETF. So S&P can go down by 30%, and other indices as well. However, some cannot do that. So I think it depends in the end on the risk profile of the person who is using ETF as let's say as a pension product. So that's regarding that. Then another question was about international diversification. I think the idea is not to pick between domestic and foreign assets. The idea is to have a combination of both, because this is going to bring you additional security, let's say. The idea is, for example, if in Zimbabwe there is a bad year or for whatever reason there is a crisis, you might have some positive developments, I don't know, in US or in Europe, somewhere else. So the idea is to somehow to not put all the eggs in one basket. So that is the idea behind the diversification, yeah. And then for the question I had regarding the Croatian home bias and investments about the FX, so the reason should not be the foreign exchange position now. It used to be a reason until last year, actually, because until 2023 we were not member of the currency union. Now we are a member of the European Monetary Union, and given that fact, basically our domestic currency is a currency of a country that has around 450 million people. So for our funds, which are big for Croatia, they are quite small in European context. So for us, that's not the question anymore. And when you talk to the funds nowadays, they're going to diversify even more and more. So they're now slowly doing this and slowly opening to the, let's say, other European markets. But before that, the FX was one of the reasons why there was a strong home bias. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomislav. And after actually Croatia first joined Schengen, then Euro, the third step will be joining the OECD, and we're very happy, like Indonesia actually. So World Bank.
Thank you, Fiona Stewart from the World Bank. I just wanted to really commend Namibia and what you've been trying to do in NAMFISA, and where we've really seen this work in terms of capital market. 2 points. One, we have to get more creative about what we mean by capital markets. And I think Croatia, you're an excellent example of, it's not necessarily always going to be listed on a formal stock exchange, but then there's a very wide gap between that and completely direct, unregulated investments. And that's why I think Namibia is trying to find a solution in the middle. And we have good examples. Next door, Malaysia, the pension funds were incredibly critical in developing project bonds and asset-backed securities for mortgages. Armenia, the pension funds there, looking a small economy, have been investing in syndicated loans alongside the IFC. Peru, we're doing a lot of work on SME mini bonds for debt instruments for SMEs. So I think we all need the solutions in these smaller economies where we don't have highly developed traditional capital markets. I think we need to get a lot more creative about what we mean by capital market instruments. And I think the regulators have an incredibly, you together with your securities market regulators have a very, very important role to play in this.
Very, very good point. I think there was another, first I saw another question, another hand raised. No, maybe I was wrong. So we may have time for one quick, otherwise we'll go, please, for you. You want to comment?
No, I agree. I mean, and we have experience from the DCP where there was no governance structures highlighted. There was no structure to safeguard investment of members, of pensioners. There were no role played in investee companies in terms of representation on management of investee companies and sitting on those boards. And there were no thoughts around what exactly is the exit strategy from this unlisted investment. And with the current sort of regulatory reform, that's what we're trying to address, to see how do we better safeguard these investments? How do we ensure that the unlisted investment managers play a role in those entities that they invest in, the investee companies? What are some of the governance structures that we can help to put in place from a regulatory perspective to make sure that the objective of the fund is safeguarded in terms of what returns might look like, how pension fund money is protected, but also helping in eventually developing the capital markets, but also helping the government in its ideal of growing the economic cake large enough to create employment. That is a sore thing for government, and we can't reason that away. That's just how it is. I think
you want to comment, Ali? You want to say something? I see you with your grabbing the mic. Final comment? Tomislav? No, maybe I comment. So no, because I think your point is really very important. People sometimes forget we think capital markets, first of all, of equity and listed equity. This is just a part. First of all, you know, global market cap on the back of the envelope is 110 trillion, which is exactly the value of bonds around the world. Okay, 65 more or less sovereign bond, 35, you know, corporate. Very important experience, and this is important. We had an amazing growth, you know, of bonds, of corporate bonds, non-financial, you know, after the crisis, after the last years. This is good. This is good because it's a new, you know, not only is a new asset class for investors, pension funds, but it's good because many companies enter the market maybe relying less on traditional, you know, banking loans, and this actually was also the regulatory objective of the global financial crisis. But also because you mentioned, you know, mini bonds. Now I take off the hat, the OECD. I mean, my experience, I was an Italian, you know, commissioner in Italian market, securities market authority, and this mini bond was really very interesting in Italy. 350 issuers. Actually issuing mini bonds is a loan. Mini bond is 1 million euros, $1 million, even less. So basically it's a bank loan, but has a dramatic, incredible signaling effect. You need to have some more transparency. There is a very interesting serious empirical work by the ECB, some serious research showing the fact that then either you go back even to the traditional, you know, banking loan with better returns, or maybe you were crowded out, you were Russian, and then you go there, or then you can go on the equity market. So in the funding escalator, this is a new ladder. So very interesting, I think, and this is important also for, you know, for pension fund, because maybe typically, you know, so less volatile, you may buy this kind of bonds and then keeping until maturity, but also, you know, bonds we discussed briefly also yesterday, thinking of infrastructure work and the others. So again, but the role of pension fund is essential. I think we are on time, so we finish on time. I think now you can get more rest, but then you should be more lively and vivid for tonight, party. I think Julia got the prize with the extra bag. But thank you very much. I think we got, an interesting panel. Very also disciplined, speakers. So thank you very much, and it has been a great pleasure. Big applause to my panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carmine Di Noia, and also all the speakers. Once again, give applause, ladies and gentlemen, for a very fruitful, dynamic discussions that we have together on the second of the plenary session this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And by the end of the second of panel discussion, we have now reached to the conclusion of the first day of OECD IOPS OJK Global Forum on Private Pensions 2024. It's been a day filled with insightful discussions and invaluable exchanges of knowledge, ladies and gentlemen. That's a wrap up of today's event, and on this lovely occasion, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all of our distinguished speakers, dedicated moderators, and engaged participants for contributing to the success of this event. Your active involvement, ladies and gentlemen, and meaningful interactions have truly enriched our sessions for the first day of event. So once again, thank you so much for being a part of this event, and we look forward to see you tomorrow for another day of enriching discussions. I'm Putri Cahaya signing out, so please enjoy the rest of your stay in Bali and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.